name's Jessica, and I know everyone in this room, so. But I'm going to talk about Dalcroze in the theater classroom. And so we are going to start by getting you guys up on your feet, so go ahead and stand, please. What I'd like you to do is listen to the music and respond with your bodies while you move around the space. Don't be afraid, it's okay. I thought it was so cool because I have always connected to using physicality as a performer, specifically with my experience on stage. So a couple of pictures of me making silly faces in different roles. I've performed since a young age, and one huge thing that's always stuck with me is committing physically when you're presenting a character. So the relation that this has to general music, this is an approach that we studied last semester in general music. One of the three main approaches to music education that we looked at along with ORF and Kodai. And so as soon as I saw this one, I knew that I saw a connection between my personal interest and especially in theater education. Future benefits, as you can tell, I have a passion for both music and theater education, and so the dream for me is to be able to teach both. And I would love to have a classroom where I got to teach both, the musical theater or some drama classes and some music classes. So I see this as a way for me to get to connect my passions in one holistic way, so that I'm kind of, I have a thing as my teacher. Dalcroze would be the way that I could go about physicality in terms of music and theater. So kind of an overview about the Dalcroze approach. It's an approach to music education that was initiated by Swiss composer Emile Jacques Dalcroze, who actually was the person you saw playing the piano on that video. That's on YouTube, and it's just one of his exercises. It involves three primary components, and that is rhythmics, ear training, and improvisation. It's primarily intended to assist in developing students' listening skills, making them better all-around musicians. It focuses primarily on exploring rhythm in a holistic way and having students use their whole bodies to engage in music. The importance is placed on students exploring the relationship that their bodies have with time, space, and energy. So the way that your body, as a musician, as a person, as an actor, can move through time, space, and energy. So here are some quotes that I really loved as I was doing some research that I think kind of sum up what Dalcroze is. The relationships of body movements involving time, space, and energy have counterparts in musical expression. That is from a dissertation. The human body is the most subtle and complete interpreter of art. I really love that. And the first object of your rhythmic training was to give the pupil control over his muscles, nerves, and emotion, to provide coordination between mind and body. I'm sure all of you know, as people who have performed, that controlling your mind is just as important as controlling your physical body. And so when these two are able to play together in Dalcroze, you can really get a good, solid foundation for performance technique. So how this connects to theater education. These are some of my theater students, and some of my siblings, actually. And as you can see, see, they each are using really great physicalities to display what the character is feeling. So for example, you can tell that this guy's a jester, even if he wasn't in a costume, he's got the, kind of gestury look going on. Here you can tell she's being really sarcastic, and she's got the physicality and the facial expression. And so, in theater education, embodying a character is something that would be really important for you to get across to your students. It takes a student's performance level from kind of mediocre or average to really full commitment. As you can tell with these guys, they're really committed to using physicality in their performance, and that helps them create a more solid and believable, genuine character. And if you've ever been in a theater classroom, I know you've heard a teacher say the phrase, acting is reacting. That is really, I think, overall what speaks to me most with the connection between Dalcroze and theater, is being able to hear what is going on around you, whether it's the people around you, the music that's happening around you, and being able to respond to that physically based on what you're hearing. So this is a sample exercise. We're not going to do it, but if you look in your packets, my stuff's on the first few pages. I have a couple different exercises when you look past the overview. And this one is called Statues. It's actually a theater exercise that I've done without a Dalcroze component, but that I really feel like Dalcroze can be applied to. The main idea is that you choose one student and they're the night guard, and you ask them to leave the room. The rest of your students will stand up and spread out across the space, and you, as the teacher, can choose whatever music you want to play. You'll turn on the music, students will be able to move around and dance depending on what they're hearing. They'll move. That's where you work on the response part, the listening and responding. And then you invite the night guard back in, and the goal is for the night guard to catch people moving. So the students will respond by freezing when they think the night guard is looking at them, and then continuing to move when they get the chance. So this is something I've done with a lot of my theater students, even without the music component, and it's something that students will love to do. I use it as even a reward at my drama camps because the students just love it. And I really think this works best with elementary and middle school. You can probably get away with it at high school depending on what the listening reaction music would be, but especially in middle and high school, this would be a great exercise. So just going over my stuff as a whole, what I found out through this investigation. So it reinforced a little bit of what I already knew, which was that physicality is a vital component in both music and theater. You need physicality both as a performer. As a musician, I'm sure all of you are aware, we use kinesthetics, you'll hear about that later, but it's incredibly important to engage yourself as a performer with your whole body. Same is true in theater, because we want to be able to figure out the gait of our character, the way our character walks, the idiosyncrasies that our character has on stage that really make it a full experience, and you allow the performer to create a genuine and unique character on stage. I also already knew that listening exercises should be incorporated into the theater classroom because I know how important the acting is reacting aspect of theater is, and how difficult that is to teach a young student who, when they see a written line, they just respond with the written line. If you can teach the acting is reacting, then they're able to take that further and make their response, again, more genuine, more believable on stage. What I learned, Dalcroze is an approach that has been applied to theater education in the past. I actually had no idea that Dalcroze was already used for theater education, but with Dr. Grasso's help, I was able to find some dissertations way back in the 60s that explored how the two were connected, and so that really reinforced what I thought was going to be my own finding, but it's okay, it's great. And I also found out, like I just explained with statues, that many of my personal favorite theater exercises can be turned into a Dalcroze exercise or be modified, like the ones you'll see in the packet. An integration into my teaching, like I said before, I have a passion for music and theater, and I really feel like this is a way for me to find a bridge between those two classrooms and allow me, if I could get certified as a Dalco's teacher, I could see myself using Dalco's approach and Dalco's techniques in both a theater and a music setting, or a crossover setting, which would be ideal. And I especially think that this is applicable to middle and high school students, which is really the age group that I'm hoping to get to teach for. So that's kind of the dream and how I'm hoping to use Dalco's in my future. Are there any questions? I have references.
Beautiful.
Any questions?
Questions may arise later too.
Great. Thanks, guys.
How'd we do on time, Lauren? How's the time?
That's good.
All right. Yeah. So we're Catherine's going to go next because she has to scoot out as soon as we're over. So it's going to be loud in the packets. And Catherine's is actually going to be the last one in your handout. You all the way to the end. All right. Lauren, you still okay doing time? All right, take it away, Catherine.
Okay. I did my project on how to transform any lesson plan to teach special learners. This project interested me because I hope to have a future in music therapy. Also, I have seen some varying qualifications with teachers in the schools for how to teach these special learners. I thought it would be a very helpful thing to teach how we can change our lesson plans that we already have to fit everyone who we will have in our classrooms. So I started with the orchestral work approach. That's an approach like the Dalco's approach that Jessica was explaining. So I did this because it's universally accessible, which means that it'll be able to fit anyone that's in your classroom. Also, it begins at the developmental level of the student. So that's a really important thing that goes into the success-oriented nature of this approach, because you can start at any level, fit it into your lesson, it's not going to be disruptive, and this student can feel like they're starting at a place where they can manage themselves in the classroom. It focuses on the process rather than the product. That's something that ties into the success-oriented nature. So when a student is focused on what they're doing instead of, what I have didn't end up being the same as this other student, instead, it's success-oriented, so they can feel good about what they've done and they can be comfortable with their needs that they have. Also, it really helps with conceptual ideas because it'll help with a student who might have autism or someone who is some sort of cognitive disability that might need some extra resources when learning the content. Also, a multi-sensory approach. I'll discuss that a lot later. That's a really important thing to think about when you're teaching students who have special needs. They might not be able to use every sense that other students might be able to use. I also thought about what we're looking for in our classroom. So what can you expect to have in your classroom? Behavior disorders, cognitive disabilities such as learning disabilities and brain injuries. Learning disabilities are probably the most common things that you'll see in your classroom. And the thing to remember with learning disabilities is there's a spectrum. It's kind of like the autism spectrum, but with learning disabilities, you can't really expect the same thing from every student who has the same condition. Autism spectrum disorder, ASD, speech and language disorders, vision loss, hearing loss, those will all tie into how you're going to teach your content to your students. You might not be able to rely on the same senses, multisensory that we were discussing earlier. You might not be able to rely on all the things that you might have thought you would. Also, physical disabilities that can tie into a lot of the movement we incorporate in our lesson plans for general music. So I took a lesson plan. I found this on the Orchestral Work website. And this is where I started, Orchestral Work, and this is a lesson plan that uses this approach. So when we look at our lesson plans, it's important to think of first what we're focusing on. That'll help guide you into what you need to change for your lesson plan to fit everyone in your classroom. So I was looking at this lesson plan, and as an example, we have rhythms such as 8th notes and 16th notes and syncopation. Then there are first and second endings or form. So those are things you need to, when you're looking at your lesson plan, make sure you understand what you're focusing on so you can move on from there and understand what you might need to change. Also, looking at what the lesson plan uses, this will help you understand what the student is going to be expected to do so that you can change it from there. So body percussion, that's a big one for someone who might have difficulty moving or understanding how their bodies are moving. Also text compositions. If someone might have a difficulty expressing what they're thinking or articulating it, that's something you're going to need to think of and work around. So the multisensory approach, we have see, hear, and touch and move. So these are all things that you're going to think of before you work on changing your lesson plan. First, you're going to think of what you're focusing on, and then look at this and see what you can apply to each of these three ideas. Okay, what things are students going to need to see as part of your lesson? What are they going to need to hear from you and other students? And how are they going to need to move and feel things in your lesson? So now that we're talking about what we're going to change in our lesson, the first thing I thought of was body percussion. That's a huge one. So this is an activity, so if you could choose a partner. There's something that we do a lot in general music, which is mirroring. So first we're going to try, one person will be the leader, and one person will be the follower. And you just kind of mirror. So if you hold your hands out, you can watch what the other person is doing and mirror them. Right, okay. So let's switch, and this time, the person who's following, close your eyes.
No.
You're following.
The follower, close your eyes.
Oh, okay.
I can't follow that. And so I saw a lot of people were touching, and that's a great thing that you can change in your lesson to fit someone. And that's just something you can do really quick. This is the whole idea with these changes. Is there something you can change really quick that's not going to disrupt your lesson and it's not going to disrupt other students? So with physical disabilities is something you're going to need to think of with a body percussion like we were saying earlier. Also teaching rhythms with hearing and vision loss. So when you're saying a rhythm, like me first and then your turn, if a student can't hear, they won't be able to do that. Right. So you are going to need to find something else, such as writing the music on the board, or if they have an aid, you can have the aid help them with a method that they have. But you're going to need to add, again, that multi-sensory approach. So if you can't rely on the hearing, you need to find sight or touch with the vision loss too. If you can't rely on sight, you need to rely on hearing or touch. So if you lose one of the, going back to diagram. If you lose one, you're going to need to have one of the other two. Also, with doing a canon, you might need to think of how a student will be able to receive this information. Are they going to be able to be on the same level as other students? If not, you will need to find a way, either you partner with them and you sing the same part, or you make sure everyone's sitting with their own parts, or something like that that's going to help the student be at the level that they need to be at. Also with composing rhythms, that's the same idea. You might need to change your expectation for the student if they're having difficulty articulating what they think, and you might need to make the composition more simple. But that's the great thing with this ORF approach, is you can do that. You can have everyone doing the same thing, except someone has a different expectation than another student, which leads me to modifications. You have the definition of modification in your handout. So modification means you're changing what you expect of the student. So this would tie into what I was discussing earlier with a student might have a different expectation for what composition they have. This is something you can change, like I said, quick in your lesson. Other students won't notice. You're the only one that's going to notice when you're seeing the final product. I was thinking of what modifications we can make for this lesson, which is understanding the canon. So, like I was saying, you might not expect that student to be as independent in their own part of a canon as you would another student. Also, the expectations of body percussion and rhythm. So you wouldn't expect the student to be able to mirror like we were fully, but then touch, but that's an expectation that you'll change. And an accommodation is something that you change in what you're doing, how you teach the content. Going back to the multisensory approach. An accommodation is when you take away one of the branches of the diagram and then you add in one of the other two. So that's an accommodation that you would make for a student. So since we have time, we can look at, this is a lesson plan that I did, and it's Kodai, it's not ORF, and I did notice that I could apply a lot of the same things that we were discussing earlier. And something in your handout that I think is really worth mentioning, this is something that I already knew, which was reiterated a lot by what I found in my research, that you can, as long as you have the right mindset when you go into your classroom, that you are going to help this student, and that if your classroom is a welcoming environment, then that's going to take care of a lot of the work for you. So that student is going to be really focused on what they can do to succeed, such as the success-oriented nature of the ORF approach, and you're going to see things tying together on their own a lot more. Thank you. Oh, we have questions? Okay. Okay.
We're stunned. Good job. All right, Holly is up next.
Oh, you go. I think we'll just pass them out when she gets up to do it.
Holly doesn't need presenter view, everybody.
It's fine. All right, I'm Holly. My topic is modern band in the high school classroom, and I actually discovered this at UK. So this is something that I wasn't previously exposed to, but definitely something that I really wish I was. And it's a way to teach to the standards, or teach music appreciation, or general music, or even the elements of music just through a new genre. And a genre that may connect better to students that weren't previously involved in the arts, or don't wake up every morning thinking, I'm so excited for choir. That is not a common thought. And so you're reaching a different audience. And so my project was to create a high school curriculum for this topic as either part of a music appreciation class, a general music class, or if I was so blessed to have a program that could sustain it as its own class, that embodies modern band. And so what is in your handout, instead of it being an overview, it is a syllabus I would give a student on day one. So it's a full curriculum, it's a weekly breakdown, assignments, projects, the grading scale, everything. And so hopefully that this will be something I can take with me. And so my idea for my project was further justified when I started visiting Southern Elementary with the people in my class. And Judy Reynolds in Southern Elementary has started doing a program called Little Kids Rock. And so she's doing a unit where the kids come to the classroom, and she's acquired, I think, a drum set from Michael Rentema, an electric guitar. She has one of my electric guitars from when I was little, and the kids get to come and sing songs that they typically are just hearing on the radio. So they're learning to explore music through songs they already know, and they're thinking they're just jamming out to like Taylor Swift or something, but they're actually learning. They're learning form, rhythmic patterns, melody, harmony. They're layering voices, learning about texture. It's all there. You can still teach the standards. You're just giving kids access and the opportunity to explore this music in a way that isn't traditional to a general music classroom. So we're going to do a little bit of this very shortly.
That's me. I'm sorry, I'll turn it on.
That's okay, we got it.
Okay.
Okay, so this is typically what you're going to see if you bring it up in your classroom. The kids get the chords, they can see it, and they're going to play along. We're going to sing a pause song, Can't Stop the Feeling, and my friend Annie's going to help me sing it. And everyone else here who's in pause and knows the song. Okay. I got this feeling inside my bones. It goes electric, baby, when I turn it on. All through the city, all through my heart. Sleeping when I get my zone. Got that sunshine in my pocket, got that big song in my feet, got that hot blood in my body. When it drops, woo! I can't take my eyes off of it. Moving so phenomenally. Stop. Okay, we're gonna stop. Yeah, okay, so that's typically what the students are going to do in elementary school when they see, when they're working with Little Kids Rock. So my idea and my rationale for my project was to adapt this for a high school curriculum. So I saw how well kids connected to this, and I saw how much it made them smile, how much they really wanted to come to music that day because they just got to play songs, but they're learning. And so I never had the chance to explore this. I had friends playing coffee shops. I went to an art school and I wasn't exposed to this. And so this is definitely something that I want to provide the opportunity to my students. I was never given a how-to because it's a very different idea. So many kids connect better to the arts in this way, and it opens more doors for students to get involved. So like I said, people wake up thinking they're going to sing Taylor Swift on the way to school. They don't wake up thinking, I'm going to go sing a Bach chorale. That is not normal. So it leads to more buy-in into the arts and giving people access to the arts that typically aren't in the classical tradition. And so that leads into recruiting. And this is one of my favorite stories is students can get involved in the arts if they find something to draw them in. And I typically observe at Tates Creek High School at least once a week, and they have 2 guitar classes there. And one day I sat through that entire guitar class, and a student came up to me and Mr. Johnson at the end, and he said, I have never sung, I don't know how to sing, but can I please be in your choir class? I really like you, and I have found a new way to be a part of this. And he did it on the spot. We put him in mid-semester. And it was so cool to see. It just gave him an opportunity, just a new way to get involved. So that leads me to my curriculum map. So I'm not making experts. The goal of the course is not to make someone really be able to play electric guitar. That's not it. But elementary school kids I have seen play 4-chord songs. High schoolers can definitely play 4-chord songs. And so the course is basically going to give an overview of learning. They'll have time to explore drum set, keyboard, bass, electric guitar, and kind of become a little bit proficient on each of the instruments. And so the class will basically have 2 performances, one in the first 9 weeks. This is if it was a semester long. The first 9 weeks would be an informants for their friends, and they would just cover a song that they knew. So they'll form groups, form their own little band, and get to cover something that they already know. And then the second 9 weeks will be a real performance. They'll get to write their own version of a 4-chord song. We'll talk about what that entails, how to do it. And then put on a real performance. And this is my, I think, favorite part of all of this. And they're going to learn how to market themselves as musicians and establish connections with the community and how to actually take this outside of the classroom. So they're going to learn how to professionally email a general manager, find somewhere that they can play, find a coffee shop. And then, this is my friend Mason Rice. He's music ed. I think all of you know Mason Rice. But he did open mic night at Common Grounds on Monday.
Oh.
And he said he'd always wanted to do it, but he'd never figured out how. He was never taught how to do it. And so I think it's really important that we value that and we see that if you just give kids the means, they're gonna want to do it. So they'll learn how to advertise their events. They're going to get to make a poster. That's one of the projects, and hang it up in school, give it to their friends and their parents. And most importantly, they'll learn what to do when they actually get to play and actually get to play a set. So some of the projects and handouts are both in your handout that you had are examples. I think I'll bring in a few guest speakers, have someone talk about marketing, how to get yourself in coffee shop or a local place to play, and how to contact people. And then someone else will talk about making your own gig checklist, so what you need to bring specific, and the students will do it as their own project. So for their specific band, what they need to bring, what's important to them, what's going to make them succeed. I think also on that list in your packet it says a smile and a good attitude, which is my favorite part. And then also learn what to do at a sound check. So all things you don't think of, the logistics that you actually need to make this succeed. Okay, so now we get to assessment, and I think this is one of the most important parts to me. There are things, you can see it in the handout, that you can grade standardized. You can give a percent. You can, there are writing assignments, there are tests, there are quizzes, and all of that is important. However, this is basically a performance-based class, and you have to realize that not every student is at the same skill level, and you have to be able to adjust to each student. So this is something I saw in the process at Tates Creek High School. Nick Johnson, I stole this from Nick Johnson, and Nick Johnson stole it from Dr. J, but using a series of checks, pluses and minuses, so that in the moment you can say, yes, this student played their test, they've been playing guitar for 10 years, it was perfect. The next student has been playing guitar for 2 days, they put in so much effort, it's the best they could give you. Do you give them 2 different grades? Or do you give them both the grade they deserve, because they both did very well. So that's in your packet is how that works. And I really appreciate that you have to adapt to a performance-based grading system. So overall, what I learned is that you can reach more kids. You can recruit more kids into the arts. You can give them the opportunity to be a part of something they never have before. It's just through a new medium. And I've seen it work. I cannot express to you how amazing it is to watch kids run to a general music classroom to do something like this, and to show their friends and tell them in the hallway as they're leaving, and get to experience something new, just giving them the opportunity. Both in the general music classroom there, and both in high school, where someone wanted to join choir after doing something in the arts they hadn't done before. And then I think most importantly, you have to identify that you can teach to the standards. You can teach composition, you can teach improv, you can teach form, melody, harmony, all of it. It all makes sense, and it can adapt to this kind of music. And so for my project, I think that I'm very excited that hopefully one day I'll be able to take this curriculum into my classroom and use it in the future. Any questions?
take right. And today we're going to be talking about diapros rhythmics in the choral ensemble setting. I'm thankful for Jessica is because she covered a lot of the same things that I'm going to cover, but just in a different form. Okay. So basically, why diapros rhythmics? Kinesthetic movement and the use of space in the choral ensemble setting has always intrigued me. One of the main things was actually when Professor Wilson was chorale TA my freshman year, the Brahms. Do you remember the Brahms? That was one of the main things that has stuck to me for so long. And this is people in moving. The approach discussed, diapros, is a general music teaching method, but I'm a firm believer that these general music teaching methods can go above and beyond the general music world. This will prepare me for my ideal choral rehearsals throughout life, and of course, the general music classroom. Hopefully you're intrigued. What is rhythmics? This is the name given by Emile Jacques Dalcroze. He was a professor of music at the Geneva Conservatory in Switzerland, and he realized that his students weren't quite understanding all these aspects of music. So what he did was he created this curriculum for them to put all these ideas into their body. And what he found out was that they better understood these things. This is him. The approach includes rhythmics, which is basically all things rhythmic and rhythmic movement within the music. Solfege and finesse of hearing, which is all aural aspects of music. And plastique, anime, and kinesthetic awareness is creativity and movement, kinesthetically. Why the choral music? Singing is an athletic endeavor, Professor Everett McCorvey. He's my voice teacher, and he always says, singing is an athletic endeavor, so my thoughts are, why not involve the whole body? If it's athletic, then the body should be involved the whole time. Rhythmics channels kinesthetic learning. If you're moving in the space to the music and you start to do things with your body, your kinesthetic learners will thrive. And I have definitely seen these ideas being learned in these rehearsals being done better because of the movement and the kinesthetic motions. Okay, and just like the Brahms, like after we did the Brahms, we sang it very well. The benefits, whole body engagement. Just like the previous slide, the kinesthetic motions involve your whole body. And then once things start to get into your body, your understanding of those concepts enhances. Okay? I get it. Enhanced understanding of these concepts leads to better performances. In my opinion, and I think a lot of my peers' opinions are that when you feel the music in yourself and in your body, you're able to channel that in the middle of the performance. Say, this is how this felt when I did this. I can't do it now, but I can remember how it felt, and I can compare that to how exactly I'm supposed to sing it or play or whatever. How to implement. Add movement. Not only just movement, but rhythmic movement. Allow your kids to tie it to a certain piece of the music. Okay, a certain part. Of course, you'll be working a part of the music, but when they move, make it have a meaning, make it have a purpose. Add exploration. When they're moving around the space, allow them to explore how these things feel in their body. Allow them to explore different kinesthetic motions and gestures. Allow them just to explore the music itself, but in the space. And add creativity. If the song is silly, let them do silly things. If it needs to be legato and serious, allow them to be creative and find something that works for them. The whole point of this is to find something that works for the students that will enhance just their performance. This video, we're going to fast forward, but these are some things. They're moving around the space, exploring the space. This is kind of what Jessica did.
our summers.
That's our summers. Here you go.
Good. And you get the gist. Those are some things you can do for the general music classroom, the choral classroom, to warm up the mind or even use it for a lesson. My first high school lesson idea involves exercises for crescendo and decrescendo. The first one is the number space exercise I learned from Michael Renzema. He is the music director at Central Christian Church where I sing, and we had a rehearsal not too long ago where he explained the decrescendo in numbers, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And those numbers can be used as the number of beats to decrescendo, but also how he explained it was the number of feet around you. So if it's 4 feet, and then 3 feet, 2 feet, and then 1 foot, that is the decrescendo over the small 4 beats. Okay? I thought that was a genius idea, and I had to write it down. The next one's the hand pressure exercise I learned from Mr. Henry Leck, where the kids get in a circle and they apply pressure over 8 beats, and they take away that pressure over 8 beats. And what they found is that when they sing these kinds of decrescendos, the bottom will fall out of it. So what he has them do is do the 8 beats, and then sing it. Crescendo, and then decrescendo. That one is a great one, I believe. The middle school lesson idea involves an exercise for legato phrasing. So, there's a legato phrase. You tell your kids to point to a certain area of the room, keep their eye on it, have them sing the phrase, and then by the end of the phrase, they get there. They have to take steady steps, because that'll increase their legato line. And to make it harder, you can say by the middle of this phrase, you have to be halfway there, still taking steady steps, and still getting to your point by the end of the phrase. The elementary lesson is my favorite. This one is just for exercise for focus and looking ahead. So can I have my 8 volunteers?
Ooh.
Get in a circle around here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to clap on the beat. So this is the beat, just clap. Good. This is warming up their mind. Yes. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to step in the circle, and I'm going to point, but when I call out a number, the next amount of people don't clap. But still, does that make sense? So not everyone's going to clap when I call out. Hold on. So I'm going to point. Now you clap. No one else clap. No. Nope, just one. Yes. Good. Now I'm going to call out a number.
Oh.
4. Yeah. 3. 1, 2, 3. Good. So now, keep going. What's going to happen now is I'm going to call out a number. And if you're not clapping, you can say, change. And we go the other direction. But you still have to keep up. 5. Change. Good, yes. 6.
Change.
3. Change. Good. See that? Good. Thank you. So that's perfect for the focus of looking ahead. Their brains are constantly active. What's happening next? What am I expected to do? I love that exercise. That was also from Henry Leck. So findings. It reaffirmed my belief that movement and kinesthetic gestures and awareness increases rehearsal effectiveness. I learned new and creative ways to use these eurythmic exercises from the Leck DVD and my book. And I ideally, each piece of music and anything I teach will have a eurythmic-based exercise section in it. Because I would 100% love to have my students active all the time. So bring it on. Adding Dalcroze eurythmics to your choral rehearsals will make a difference. I believe it. Be creative and enjoy the process of learning. Believe me. All right. What's the Brahms thing? What did you do? The Brahms thing. Professor Wilson had us spread out around the room, and if my memory serves me correct, it was a bunch of arm movements for legato, right? And once we started doing that, we began to take steps. It's been 3 years. But we would step to the beat throughout the room, but slowly, because the Brahms piece is schmaltzy, okay? So that was the exercise, and once we were done with that exercise, the legato line was superb.
Are you going to take the Dalcroze this summer?
This summer, what are the dates?
July 9th to 20th. Just contact me.
No, I can't, actually.
I think a lot of you are traveling over the summer. What's she saying?
Oh. I have Annie's handouts because they're not in your guys' handout.
So raise your hand if you're not in 361.
And I'll try and get everyone a handout.
So there was not into. Why? Well, he's a stick.
Yes, that's for me.
Let's all clap for Kelly for getting my
That was Dr. Russell's mistake. It's a brain fart.
It's okay, Dr. Vatzel.
All right, Annie.
Okay, hello, I'm Annie DeVries, and I will be speaking about using literature in the general music classroom. So this is why I became interested in this topic. I went to a workshop last semester with Dr. Ari Almeida. She's so cool. You have to talk to her. And she did this lesson using this book. It's called Aliens Are Coming, and it's by Megan McCarthy. And every time she would read the phrase, the aliens are coming, the students were expected to sing this like little song, and they would play the pitch percussion instruments. And it was in minor, and it was just really cool, and it just like added so much to the book. And it taught the students about the minor book. Another reason is I've always loved reading and music. I love to read, love Harry Potter, really basic, I know. And I love music. I mean, I'm getting a degree in it, so why not combine the two and see how they mesh? And then another thing I thought was interesting was that composers have been doing this for centuries. They would read a book or a poem or a story, and they would be inspired by this text, and they would want to write a song about it. These are just a few examples, such as Claire de Lune, beautiful piano and vocal piece based on this poem. Catcher in the Rye, very famous book. Guns N' Roses did a song about it, which is really cool. Countless songs inspired by the Psalms, the Christian Bible. There's a million, I'm sure if you're in the choir, you've sung at least 10. And then literature inspires music, and music inspires literature. So how can this be effectively used in the general music classroom? I'll give you a few seconds to read that quote. So one thing that's really cool about this is that students can be learning 2 subjects at once, and this is actually a fun term called interdisciplinary learning that I learned from Jessica a few days ago.
I could collaborate with the language arts or reading teacher in the school that I work at and see what are they doing, what books are they reading, are they reading any poems that maybe have a song or something that I could incorporate into my general music classroom. It engages with students in a creative way, so there are so many opportunities for students to read a text and then maybe like write a song about it or write like a little motive, or there's so many opportunities for that if you give them something to be inspired by. And it brings students a new understanding of music. So this is really good for visual learners, people that like to see what's going on, like to read the written word, and they are able to engage a lot better if they can actually see it, and they may love to read, and this may be really great for a lot of students. And then this goes alongside the practices of the orchestral work approach. So this can be easily incorporated into that approach. Several benefits for connecting this with reading. So my topic is what is the best way to teach musical concepts through or with the addition of literature. I'll give you a few seconds to read this quote. And one thing I already knew, or some things I already knew about this subject, was that books in the general music classroom will benefit visual learners, like I just talked about. And then you must think about the age of the students that you're teaching. So you want to have an age-appropriate book to go with an age-appropriate lesson. So you wouldn't want to use a book about the alphabet with 5th grade students, because they are much farther above that. They don't need to be reviewing that. And then you wouldn't want to do something too challenging for a kindergarten student. You wouldn't want to have them no way to understand what you're talking about. So you have to keep that in mind when you use these books in your lessons. This is what I found in my research. So this is what to do when you choose a storybook, poem, or other piece of literature that will supplement your lesson. So these are a few objectives to keep in mind while you make your lesson plans. Number 1, know what musical concept you want to teach first, and then choose a book to go alongside. So remember, you are a music teacher, your objective is to teach a musical concept, but it may be more engaging or more interesting for the student if you add this book alongside. So, but make sure that the first thing you consider is your musical lesson, and then it goes along with what you're teaching and their fluency and their literacy in music. Number 2, does the book include musical qualities such as rhythm, a repeating refrain, ostinato created from the text, and a melody, sounds for various characters, instruments, or a song be added? So this may take some creativity on your part or on the student's part, several opportunities for them to be creative. And then there are a lot of books that just already have these things, like you can just make them very easily from the book that you're reading. And we'll do something of that at the end. Number 3, are there possible learning extensions? So can you extend what you've taught? Can you challenge the students more appropriately? Can you deepen what they've learned about? Can you advance? Will this book help and be able to facilitate those learning extensions? Number 4, what is an age-appropriate level for this lesson and book? Like I said before, you don't want something too juvenile or too mature for the students. You want them to be able to understand for the music lesson and the book, both things. Number 5, is the book enjoyable? Will the students like it? Will they have fun? If you only read half of the book, will they want to read the rest? Things like that. Will they want to tell their friends about it? Will they be excited to come to music if they know you're going to be reading a book that day? And then number 6, are there opportunities for students to be creative, to continue to develop their musical imagination? This is a very Orphe concept. Can you be creative? Can you extend? Do you give the students the freedom to create, to be expressive, or is that easily addable to your lesson, to the book that you're going to be using in your class? So in the back of my handout, there are 3 lesson plans. Like I said before, the age groups and the grades you are teaching matter. So you don't want something too juvenile or too mature. So I I've included 3 lesson plans, one for kindergarten and first grade, one for second and third grade, and one for fourth and fifth grade. If you'd like to read through them, you can, or use them. So for the kindergarten and first grade, it's a lesson using the book Thump Thump, Rat-a-tat-tat by Jean Bear, and the concept is keeping a steady beat and then learning the concept of crescendo and decrescendo. So in the lesson, the students are separated into 2 bands, marching bands, and they march like this, like to and from the middle of the room. And the middle of the room is where they should be the loudest, and then when they back up, they're supposed to be quiet. So it's using movement, not Dalcros, to learn the crescendo and decrescendo. Second and third grade is a lesson using Chicka Chicka Boom Boom by Bill Martin Jr. and John Arkenbolt. And the concept is recognizing a repeated rhythmic motive. And they would be using body percussion and then connecting that with percussion instruments for the repeated rhythmic phrase. Fourth and fifth grade is a lesson using the Jazz Fly by Matthew Golub. This concept is learning to scat sing in jazz music. So I actually did a similar lesson a few weeks ago at Southern Elementary. And this uses the song It Don't Mean a Thing If It Ain't Got That Swing. And it has an Ella Fitzgerald video for scatting, and it's just super fun. So how will I integrate this into my teaching? I will use these lesson plans I create and others that I can find. And then I'll be mindful of using literature in the general music classroom in a certain number of lessons per unit throughout the school year. So I like the idea of having units, and then I would like to include books in at least 1 or 2 or 3 lesson plans within each unit, so that it's not something that is rare or something that's like too much. And then here's my interactive activity. You all have the Chicka Chicka Boom Boom lesson has you identifying the following rhythm. So repeat after me. Chicka Chicka Boom Boom.
Chicka chicka boom boom.
Will there be enough room?
Will there be enough room?
Okay, now I'm going to add something, and you'll have to do it back, so it'll be my turn, your turn. Chicka Chicka Boom Boom.
Chicka chicka boom boom.
Will there